Welcome to Charging the Agency Frontier. Today I'm joined by agency consultant Karl Sakas. Karl draws on his operations background to help agencies overcome growing pains, and clients call him their agency therapist. That's what we all need right now. Beyond advising hundreds of agencies worldwide, Karl volunteers as a bartender on an antique train. How's that for a little conversation starter there? But Karl, thanks for coming on the show. Anything that you'd like to add before we jump in and talk about COVID-19 and a new strategy for agency new business?
Robby, good to see you. Let's dive in and help people.
All right. Awesome. Okay. So we had some conversations prior to this episode, and you were telling me about the 3 tiers of financial stability. And I think that's a good place to start, is kind of defining what that is and what the agency landscape looks like and how different types of agencies are, able to respond to this. Tell me about the 3 tiers of agency financial stability.
So the 3 tiers are shaky, stable, and strong. This is based on my work with hundreds of agencies all over the world, everywhere except Antarctica. And the idea is that you can fit your current financial situation into one of those 3. So thinking of the 3, we've got shaky at the bottom, stable in the middle, and strong at the top. Shaky would be that you are overly dependent on one client for a significant portion of your revenue. My definition is if you get more than 20% from one client, you've got a client concentration problem. It could also be true if you're getting a lot of your leads from one source. From a cash perspective, if you look at your cash in terms of how many months of expenses you've got in cash reserves, you would be in a shaky spot if you have less than 3 months of cash. Stable is doing better. You don't have a client concentration problem. No one's producing more than 20% of your revenue from a single client. You probably have 6+ months of cash. That is 6 months of expenses in cash. And you also aren't focused on an industry that is currently struggling right now. For instance, hospitality, travel, events, things like that. So we've got shaky, stable, and then strong would be an agency that has at least 12 months of expenses in cash, doesn't have a client concentration problem, is generally feeling a lot more runway and a lot more stability in their decisions. So shaky, stable, strong. Of course, the exact number of months, that's going to depend on how risk averse you are. If you're overspending on labor, you're going to go through the money faster, things like that. But that's the starting point.
Gotcha. All right. Should agencies change their revenue target for 2020 in light of COVID-19?
Probably. It's a challenging year. I know some have said that agencies will grow. I think agencies that are in the roughly 10% strong category certainly might grow. But things I'm hearing from my clients or all agencies and from other agency owners, it's more about concerns about their clients cutting back, concerns about prospects saying, well, maybe not now, or is there something smaller we could do? People are concerned. I don't think that'll necessarily last for the entire year, but certainly for the next few months. But imagine if your sales slow down for, say, 3 months, it's going to be hard to recover that later as everyone's leery.
Right. And I've heard a lot of talk about, just using this time to get prepared for, hopefully by Q3 when things really normalize and the economy begins to pick up again, that, at that point you'll have had relationships maybe that you've nurtured along the way, or focused on, maybe your own positioning, things, your own agency site, maybe things that have kind of been on the less priorities. Or less of a priority in the previous world that we lived in, and now are a higher priority to kind of reevaluate, okay, is my offering in sync, all these different areas that might be touched. And as far as, small, mid-size, large agencies, so it sounds like, really the bigger agencies with more, capital behind them are going to be able to weather the storm a lot better than the small to mid-size agencies, who are going to be a lot more challenged during this period.
On the whole, yes. Of course, a larger agency is spending money faster too. Typically agencies are putting 50 to 60% of their incoming revenue toward labor, toward the owner compensation, employees, and key contractors. If you're spending more than 60% on labor, you're going to be in trouble. But ultimately, the larger the reserves you have, the likely the more comfortable you're going to feel.
Yeah, got it. All right. So what if an agency sells to a hardened industry? What are they supposed to do? What's kind of the game plan from here?
First, accept that things have changed and it's a bad situation. I would look at, are there people within your target industry that are thriving? There may be some cases where they are. I would also look at what can you do to use your transferable skills in another industry. For instance, if you're focused on marketing for professional services and you work with, say, a lot of architects and you see that slowing down, you might be able to do similar work in accounting or in legal, which likely are going to be very in demand right now.
Yep. Yep. Got it. Good advice. Should agencies change the services they sell as clients consider cutting the budgets?
Yes, in a couple ways. One, if you are currently offering services that are nice to have, look at offering or adding offerings around more staple services. Think of staple services would be like lead gen, or activities to generate direct sales if you're working with retail or e-commerce clients. That need is not going to go away unless it's a situation where the business can't sell, in which case then it would. But things like general online marketing, people need that for the most part, regardless. In contrast, people may push off redesigning their website, or they may want to do something around, say, conversion optimization rather than a full-scale redesign of the whole thing. Branding is probably is going to struggle because people don't need to rebrand. I mean, yeah, they need to, but they may not want to right now. So if you're primarily focused on the services that are nice to have, I would look between you and your existing team members, what could you offer to your client base that fits into more of the staple services? I would also look at how you deliver the services. For instance, a lot of agencies are focused on getting 12-month retainers for recurring revenue, which is a good idea. But if you find that your clients don't want to commit to, say, a 12-month retainer, maybe you could anchor. Normally we do 12. Given the circumstances, we're willing to do a 6-month retainer. Or if you normally do 6, maybe you'd be willing to do 3. 3 isn't ideal, but if it's between 3 months versus nothing, it probably makes sense to go with the 3 months depending on what your sales pipeline looks like. And
You're saying too, I mean, that standards have to change a bit. I mean, I think, I've had some calls with agencies where, our agency reviews where, essentially we're talking about kind of their ideal clients and all that. And then in the process of that conversation, I'm like, you realize this might be changing right now because, you're saying that you don't want to do anything less than 12 months or less than this amount. And, if I could recollect correctly during the recession, the Great Recession, I mean, the way to survive was, oftentimes to fill the cookie jar and take on, the work that was required to keep the business afloat. So I think that's going to be a mindset shift that's going to happen of, okay, we are in this situation. And like you said, accept it and, move forward based on the reality.
yes, though, two things to help make that easier. One, don't stop marketing. You were alluding to the shoemaker's kids problem earlier, where
Yeah.
agencies tend to put off their own marketing. I mean, double down on your marketing now, not in like a pushy, exploitative way, but all the projects that have queued up that you haven't done, you've got that backlog. Now may be a good time to do it as you keep staff members and they may not have as much to do. The second piece is you think about what to do. Be sure to manage the expectations anytime you've made a compromise on the terms. I call that framing things as strategically free or strategically discounted. If people are getting a special deal, make sure they know it. Make sure it's in your contract or statement of work or what have you, and even put it on the invoices. If you're choosing to give someone, say, a 20% discount, the invoice should list the full price. It should reference a discount due to COVID pandemic, special situation, and then have the final amount. Don't just cut it 20% without disclosing it, because the idea is that 6 months from now, when, say, hopefully things are stabilized, they aren't thinking, well, that was the price. No, they've known since the beginning they were getting a special deal that was time limited only. Strategically free or strategically discounted. It can't be secret free or secretly discounted.
Yeah. Love it. It's great advice. Um, All right. So now we have agencies working from home and remote teams, remote collaboration. Some are more ready than others to embrace it.
Yeah.
But what if agencies are saying, "Hey, our current sales process, we win business when we're in-person meetings and we get in front of them and we have a chance to build that chemistry." What do you say to those agencies?
That's going to have to change. If you and or your clients or prospects are on lockdown or isolation or something else, you're not going to be able to meet in person. And I think it is worth considering. Uh, in person is nice in a lot of ways, but I'm 7 years into running my business, and almost all of it is remote. you know Certainly my client delivery, actively all of my sales activities. I think the last time I did an in-person sales meeting was in 2014. I happened to be in town for a speaking engagement. An agency was like, "We can't come to your talk, but do you mind stopping by the office?" And I was like, "Well, all right." I normally don't, but I was in town anyway. Figured it was on the way home. Even for prospective clients who are near me, I do the conversations via Zoom, via video, because think even if they're local, say they're 20, 30 minutes away, you're killing an hour of time to get there and back, even if COVID-19 weren't an issue. And you can't, it's disruptive. So accept that things have changed, and then look at how can you create a similar experience. It's not the exact same experience, but a similar impact to your prospective clients. Plan on extra communication, over communication. I know that Liston Witherell of Serve Don't Sell, sharing some good advice about remote selling, and I know he has some more on that. But if you've been used to doing in-person selling, you're unfortunately going to have to change.
All right. And then we talked about retainers, kind of, reluctance to commit to 12-month retainers, and the answer there being, 3-month, 6-month, maybe be more flexible, but make sure that you're highlighting the discount, that you're making sure that it's on the contract, it's on the invoices, that they know that they're getting a special rate and that doesn't last forever. They're getting an exception to the rules.
Exactly. And related, if you're more project-based currently, or that's part of your process to start with the project, if you aren't doing paid discovery yet, now is the time. Some sort of initial mini project that they could take elsewhere but would choose likely not to. Rather than starting with the enormous project, you may want to say, this sounds like a 3-phase situation, phase 1, 2, 3. Roughly here's what we do in phase 2 and 3, but let's focus on phase 1 first. You're not having
Yeah.
to commit to a year-long engagement.
Yeah. Okay. And then what should agencies say to current clients to encourage upsells? Is upselling possible? Or does that come off as, I have my own experiences as a matchmaker and with Agency Match, and I got a response. We do outbound with Agency Match, got a response yesterday, and it addresses COVID and everything in our response and
Yeah.
our updated pricing and everything. But the one agency owner responded was like, "This is so tone deaf. Like, who cares about new business, when we're just trying to survive?" And I'm thinking, well, I'm trying to survive too and grow this platform and help you.
Right.
But, that's how it works. But it seems like there's, with that amount of fear, is upselling possible?
I wouldn't stop selling altogether. Don't put sales on hold for the next few months. But you may need to lead with value first, to say, if this is someone you've been speaking with and they've been a prospect and maybe they're like, "Call me in a week or a month," or what have you, and now COVID-19 is happening. I would lead by asking just how they're doing, like how is it impacting their business. The odds are that conversation will lead to some of the things they're struggling with that you could help them solve. But rather than, "Hey, just checking in, what's the status on, any feedback on the proposal we talked about last week?" I wouldn't lead with that, because that's not going to work. Everyone's distracted right now. If you assume that everyone is distracted, everyone is worried, that's the mindset. A couple years ago, I was in Portland, Oregon, and one of my Lyft drivers mentioned he had come from the Ukraine to the U.S. Amidst the war there, and he had been reunited with his family, and things had turned out okay, all things considered. One of his comments, though, was that he had left behind a small business in the Ukraine, a small business in the trucking industry. And his comment about leaving the business behind was, he said, when it's war, you don't care about your business. You just care about keeping your family safe. If you assume that your prospects are concerned primarily about keeping their family safe and their business second, or something other than number one on the list, that's, I think, a better place to start from. And business will follow if they're ready, but I would expect everything to slow down, and pressing people to go faster will only backfire.
Yeah. What about you? I have a random question, but I had a
Yeah.
conversation with a friend of mine that owns an experiential marketing agency, and I have several friends that have agencies in the experiential marketing space, and they are devastated, right now.
Yes.
And the one friend I was speaking with is devastated, I'll say the least. And then the other interesting use of his staff and resources to actually help with efforts to get food out to children that aren't in school and all kinds of stuff. So I
Yeah.
love how he's responding to the situation. But both of them are like, we don't know if this is the end of our business. What if you're an experiential marketing agency in this climate? Is that the time to truly panic and say, like, we've got to do something else if we're going to be relevant, at least until things come and normalize and we can all get together again? Or what do you do if you're in that space?
If you are dependent on people interacting with you in person, you do need to assume that may go away for at least a few months. I have
Yeah.
an annual conference roundup, and I was just updating it the other day about various agency conferences, like 25 plus different events, and almost everything between late February, early March, and into almost the end of May has canceled or postponed. There are a couple heading into May that are still listed as current, but I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's gonna stick. Um, in terms of experiential, I think one of the key things to think about, and yes, it may be time to panic, but thinking about the word experience, customers still want experiences. Right now there are hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. and certainly more worldwide, who are at home, if not all the time, then much of the time. They still want experiences. They still want distraction, maybe now more than ever. I had a call with an agency owner earlier this week. He had been at home for three days, and his kids were bouncing off the walls. And he was like, "Carl, I know you normally work from home, but like I don't know how you do it." So people still want experiences, and your clients that have been delivering in-person experience-oriented events
They
still
need an
need,
alternative.
yeah. So now is the time to pivot, whether it's virtual events, whether it's something else. I don't know the exact solution, but people still want experiences. They just will be delivered in very different ways.
Yeah, I like that answer. Awesome. Okay. Should agencies be investing in sales and marketing during this period? And I can, again, speak a little from my perspective with Agency Match, and that we, offer a sales marketing solution for agencies. And I've definitely seen the nature, the tone of calls shift over the last couple of weeks. We're still signing up agencies. There's still agencies proceeding, but there's definitely a lot of agencies that are like, we're going to pause, any marketing, any expenditures other than what's mandatory. What would you tell agencies, and does it depend on kind of those three tiers of financial stability? If they're kind of 6
Yes.
months and above, they should probably be. I'll let you answer.
Well, thinking, shaky, stable, strong. If you're in a strong position, I would absolutely keep marketing and sales going. Because, if you're going to be in business a year from now, 2 years from now, you need to have invested in the marketing now, because it takes time to make an impact, right? If you're in a stable situation, I wouldn't cut all of your marketing and your sales efforts altogether, because after all, your marketing efforts make your sales easier. If you were doing sales as the owner, or if you've got a salesperson or a sales team, if you stop marketing, you are making your sales way harder, both now and in the coming months and in the coming year and beyond. If you're in the shaky situation, so we've got strong, stable, and shaky, you're going to have to decide, are you going to make a run for it? Are you going to invest the cash and the personal energy to survive? and that's up to you. Um, I spoke with an agency owner in the past week who has, about a month and a half of cash available, and they have a big prepayment coming in pending for one of their clients, but they don't know if it's going to come in. Another client said, due to various downturns within manufacturing, like they're seeing their clients cut back, they're downsizing their teams, they're cutting everyone's hours, and so it's not a good situation. So if your agency if you've always felt like you're sort of teetering on the brink of staying in or going out of business, I think you're going to have to decide: are you going to double down and try to make it, or is this the sign that this isn't what you want to do? I know that's not that's not exactly motivational, but it is realistic. And
I was going to say it's realistic. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And maybe a way to think about it would be, if you've got a couple months of cash, the assumption is for most of your clients, apart from the hardest hit industries, you aren't going to lose 100% of your revenue. If you're in experiential, if you're focused on hospitality and tourism, I would expect a significant drop. But if you're not necessarily focused there, I probably won't drop 100%, but it could drop 10%, 20%, maybe 50% on the extreme side. So having that money for the expenses helps you draw things out to last longer. But if you look ahead and you've got, 2 months of cash and you don't think it's going to turn around, you may want to weigh whether to shut it down now rather than burn all of that cash. So that 2 months from now, if say things have gotten worse, and it may be longer than 2 months, but say 6 months from now, if things haven't gone well and now you have no money to pay severance to people and no cash left over as you shut down the business and you're still exhausted, weigh whether it would have been better to shut things down now rather than hobble along for 6 months.
Yeah, got it. Hard advice, but relevant during these times. How did agencies that survive weather the Great Recession?
Was talking with my colleague Diane Stadlin about this. She's my director of agency services. She's worked in agencies since the early 80s. So she's seen all kinds of cycles along the way. One of the things we were talking about was that in 2008, there wasn't the quarantine or isolation. There weren't all of these businesses just wholesale closed operation. There were still sporting events. There was the Olympics, which was, powerful from a marketing perspective and also just a hope perspective. There were still other sporting events. I mean, in this case, various sporting leagues shut down. Question about, the Olympics viability. During the 2008 recession, I mean, everyone was hurting to some extent and some people were really hurting. I think the big difference here is that everyone is in panic mode, and whether they're personally impacted by being infected with coronavirus or having COVID-19, they're impacted by through the isolation. So in terms of agencies that succeeded, it's a very different picture. I would say that the stronger your financial position, the stronger you would do then in 2008 and now here in 2020.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, this is the time for agency owners to step up and be true leaders and be decisive, come up with what makes the most sense to do and be strategic, but also be decisive and make the hard decisions. That's what leadership's about. And, even if it means shutting down the agency, even if it means investing into growing the agency amidst the fear and having kind of the opposite approach. Either way, it's going to take true leadership in these times to succeed, to get through this. And I think the agency owners that, aren't leaders, that don't want to step up to the plate, that kind of shy away from this whole thing and I just don't want to deal with it, they're going to be the ones reeling from it in a big way.
Even in uncertainty, we can take certain actions. There are things that we know we need to do. And as leaders, as business owners, as agency leaders, everyone is looking to us. Our employees, our contractors, our clients, our prospects, our service providers. Like they're looking to us. And if we don't say anything, we create a communications or information or leadership vacuum, and people start filling in their own answers, which may be worse than what we would have said.
Yeah, probably our
It,
worst.
if you are currently paralyzed, my advice would be, if you're currently paralyzed by what to do, maybe you've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 options. My recommendation would be to do this. I have a tool that I talk about on my website that I use with clients. I call it an advanced retrospective. It's a visioning tool. There are a number out there where you write about the future as if it's already happened. So say you're weighing, for instance, shut down my agency or, buckle down and I'm gonna try to make it work. You've got 2 options there. In that case, write an advanced retrospective as of, say, December 31st, 2020. And one of them is, today's December 31st, 2020. I am so glad I chose to shut down the agency in March or April. Here's what happened. And the other one is, I am so glad that in March or April, I didn't choose to shut down my agency, and here's what happened. And you can use these to describe what life is like and what you can imagine life might be like in the future based on those decisions. You're probably going to find that writing one of those felt like a better match. One of them is going to be a lot easier to write than the other. And how you feel about those can help inform what to do next.
Awesome. Karl, appreciate the amazing advice. I know our agencies will appreciate it as well. How do people get in touch with you? How do they reach out?
If you're on Twitter, I'm Karl Sakas on Twitter. That's at KARL, S as in Sam, AKAS. And if you're looking for whether it's one-on-one help or free advice, you can go to sakasandcompany.com, SAKASAND, the word company.com. There are hundreds of articles there with advice on managing your agency, both now and in general, and my newsletter twice a week with tips, Wednesdays and Saturdays, on making things easier. I know this is a difficult time. All we can do is do our best, and good luck to everyone out there.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Karl. Thanks for the time. And I'm sure we'll have you on the show again. You've got a lot of profound wisdom, but I think definitely timely to have this conversation while we're in the beginning stages. And I know people like you and others will be here to support agencies along the way as they look to do whatever it is they need to do if they want that extra hand or that perspective, that advice that you can offer, that you can bring. Then I definitely personally recommend Karl, and just always just been very impressed with his perspective on things and his experience and what he brings. So I think people like you are people that agency owners should definitely be tapping into at this point to make sure that they're running towards the right end game.
Well, thank you, and good luck to everyone out there.
All right, thanks.